Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Golden Opportunities Coaching YouTube channel. Welcome to those of you who are enjoying your midday. If you're on the East Coast, a little bit earlier if you're on the West Coast. No matter where you are in the world, hope you're having a blessed and productive Holy Saturday. If you're Christian, just a blessed and useful weekend if you're not. And I've actually been put up to a challenge, so you all get to ride a journey with me. And the challenge that I've been put up to by one of my mentors is to make as much content as I can between now and June 1st. In other words, when I have free moments, make as much content as I can so that we can get a maximum number of visual on this channel and my pro wrestling channel as well, which if you're interested in pro wrestling and MMA, please come on over and join us at Pro Wrestling Logic. If that's not your thing, you can stay here. Eventually, we are going to start a comedy channel too. But anyhow, the reason I've been given the challenge of trying to come up with as much content as possible is because my mentor said to me, simply put, you're having fun with this, you're helping people, and it's serving a greater good. Do as much as you can for as long as you can, so you can have a foundation. And so it came up in a client session just now. How do we find balance in a chaotic situation? You know, the coronavirus has certainly been a lot of chaos for a lot of people. It's led to people having anxiety attacks, panic attacks, struggling with depression, struggling with feelings of inadequacy, struggling with how am I going to protect my children, how am I going to protect my family, all these things, right? How do we handle chaos in the midst of our daily lives? And how do we do so and not lose our center and keep focused on the greater good and the things that really matter in the long run? And so what I'm doing right now, even as we speak, just so I can kind of focus this, is looking up quotes about balance, because I think oftentimes we forget what balance is and what balance is not. Balance is, in the core, looking at a situation and seeing both sides and choosing the side which makes the most logical and linear sense to you at the time. It does not mean that there is a right or wrong. Instead, there's a progressive or destructive mentality to all things. It's interesting that even Donald Trump is really who's a polarizing figure, obviously, here, right? But what's interesting to me is even he has quotes on balance, and I think everybody has a different viewpoint. But I want to, because his quote popped out to me when I was doing research for this video. He has a quote that says, "If you're interested in balancing work and pleasure, stop trying to balance them. Instead, make your work more pleasurable." In other words, when you want good in your life, you need to find a good purpose for uncomfortable things. You know, there can be a good purpose for the chaos that's going on with the coronavirus right now. It can be used to reset your life. It can be used to reprioritize your life. It can be used to wake you up to the fact of where you've been off kilter for a long time, sometimes years, months. It can be used for any number of reasons. You know, Zig Ziglar, who I love, has a quote too. He says, "I believe that being successful means having a balance of success stories across many areas of your life." It's not mutually exclusive to be successful. In other words, we don't want to be in a place where we're successful with our family but a failure at work, because usually that means our family's not going to eat dinner, right? And we don't want to be so successful with our family that we forget to be successful in our spiritual life, because otherwise our family and our loved ones can become idols, and that isn't good either. You know, you can truly be considered successful in your business and home life if they all are balanced out. So seeking balance is making time for everything in your life. And, you know, that wheel, or that, what I call the seesaw of life, is ever changing. It's ever evolving. And so today you might be focused more on family than you are on business.
tomorrow you might be focused more on business than you are on spirituality. The next day you might be more focused on spirituality than you are either of the two. As long as each of these things in your day-to-day life receives 1/3 of your attention, receives enough of your attention that nothing goes out of balance or nothing goes undertreated or nothing goes negatively impacted by being neglected, you're good. And I think it's important to remember that we can be good even in the challenges that persist. And it's uncomfortable to really look and think about where we're out of balance, because it means we haven't used our time judiciously. It means we haven't necessarily been the best stewards of the limited gift in time that we're given. Each one of us, we don't know how much time we have, but we have the same amount of time in a week. We have the same amount of time in a month. We have the same amount of time in a year. And Les Brown, who is fabulous, and if you're not familiar with Les's work, please go check him out on YouTube. But he often says we underestimate what we can do in a day, and we overestimate what we can do in a year. And I've heard the inverse of that too. We overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in a day. In other words, how focused are we with how we use our time? It's interesting because so often balance is also about being able to say, no, this is a bad use of my time. It's interesting. For me, I was called in my heart to do something last night, and to think that I would have done it 3 months ago, it was giving a gift to someone random, as in I didn't even know who the gift was for at the time. It was put on my heart to make a purchase, and it didn't matter who it was for. It was just there. It was just there on my heart. And it would have nagged at me all night long and into the next day and into the next week and into the next month probably had I not done it. And the interesting part of that was there was a chaos about not taking action, and the only way to retrieve and return to balance was to take the action. Now, it doesn't matter what happens from there. All that matters is that I sought the balance of taking an action that leveled me off, right? And that's important. Helen Keller, who I love, especially being disabled myself, she said once that toleration is the greatest gift of the mind. It requires the same effort of the brain that it takes to balance oneself on a bicycle. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about that really deeply in the economic times we're in right now. Are we all poor, or are we all one step away from being rich? When we look at diversity in our society and we look at racial tensions that are at an all-time high, we look at religious tensions that are at an all-time high, we look at political tensions where everyone's ready to go after each other over who's in charge, and this party is better than that party, and this candidate's better than that candidate, and this candidate dropped out of the race, and doom and gloom, and Eeyore, everybody, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Wait a minute. Whether or not we agree with something, we do have to tolerate it to be able to move forward, right? I don't have to like you to love you. I don't have to agree with you to love you. I don't have to understand something to return to balance in my life. Because people have the freedom of disagreement. Let me say that again. People have the freedom of disagreement. And when we impose upon others, well, if you don't agree with me, then you can't be my friend. When you don't agree with me, you're just stupid. If you don't agree with me, whatever parameter we put forward, that creates chaos. Because all of a sudden the person has to respond and react to that exclusion that we've placed upon them. And the exclusion we've placed upon them makes them say, well, maybe I need to change what I'm looking at. Maybe I need to acquiesce. Maybe I need to surrender. Maybe I need to just give in because I don't want them to be mad at me. Maybe I need to just give up on myself and what matters to me. And it's interesting, even Joe Biden, political candidate right now for the 2020 election, has a quote about this that's really interesting. He says, the White House isn't a place to learn how to deal with international crisis, the balance of power, war and peace, the economic future. and the next generation. In other words, if you're going to lead even in your own house, have standards that you live to and live by. Don't be figuring it out as you go. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have to be reactive and responsive, but if you don't know your core values, who does? If you don't know what's going to bring you peace, who does? If you don't know what's going to bring you back to center so you can make empowered and informed decisions, who does? That's why it's so important, especially during this time of Easter for the Christian church and various other spiritual days for other faiths. I think it's important to look and go, am I living what I say I believe even in these times of chaos, or is my emotional core taking me to places I don't want to go? You know, my emotional core in this journey has taken me to a desire to want to help people more than normal. And what's really bizarre with that, at least for me, is I'm usually, I try to be anyway, a really helpful person. And yet now it's amplified. It's like 10 times because there's so many people hurting out there. And I've done adjusted sessions with clients this week. You know, they can't afford my normal rates, so we do adjusted prices. Or I've come up with a challenge. If you follow on social media, if we can get 300 subscribers this weekend, that I give $100 to either a charity, or we'll work it out to where someone could DM me either here on YouTube or on Twitter and say, hey, I've got a family member who doesn't have food. But what I want to do is I want to donate some funds, not because it's about me. It's not about me. That $100 isn't going to make a drop of a bucket in the challenges in our world, right? There's billions of dollars that need to be spent to get people back to a livable place, not only here in North America, but worldwide, especially in war-torn countries or impoverished countries where this is every day for them, right? Like, I think one of the things I find amazing in this whole pandemic is that now third world countries don't have nearly as much of a gap with the civilized countries, right? Like now, ultimately, those who are in, let's say, Kenya, and those who are in the United States, or those who are in Uganda, and those who are in Canada, or those who are in the Congo, and those who are in Australia, you're not that far apart, because chaos unites us, right? Like, we all have automatic responses that happen in the midst of tragedy, in the midst of trauma, and they're universal to human nature. We all panic, and then we try to reason, we try to logically come out of it, and then most of us will go to some spiritual place. Even the atheist or the agnostic's going to go, oh, God, wait, you don't exist. Oh, power that I don't understand, or oh, something greater than myself, help me here, right? Like, we all go through that moment of, I don't got the answer, something greater than me does, and there's a balance in the surrender of saying, I don't have the answer. You know, my heart is, I want to help every person I possibly can for as long as I can. That's a good heart to have. But if someone said, what was my heart, I don't know, 3 months ago, I would say to get out of a nursing home, and I had to return to the balance that I knew. My balance was always, I knew I was going to return to work. I knew I was going to return to being of service to humanity. I never knew how. And for 15 months, I was in chaos. Every day I'd wake up, and I'd be like, what the heck am I going to do with myself? I'm looking at a TV. I'm so bored. What's the point of my life? What's the point of what I'm doing? But it's funny, while I was in there, I researched selling products online. While I was in there, I researched how to make YouTube work. While I was in there, I researched how to get booked for speaking gigs. And so in the midst of chaos, I was striving for the balance of returning to the person that I wanted to actively become. And that's what you need to do now. Who do you want to be 6 months to the day after this pandemic is over? Who do you want to be on this date in 2021 or in 2025 or in 2030? Who do you want your kids, your spouse, your parents, your coworkers, your church members, the strangers in your community, who do you want them to see you as you go through this metamorphic transformation that's being thrust upon humanity due to this pandemic? Do you want to be seen as a person of chaos or a person of balance? Or a person who's trying to balance the inner chaos so they can move forward? Look, I'm not saying don't have moments where you go, holy crap, this is hard. I'm not saying don't have moments where it's like, I'm in over my head. But remember, humanity and human nature is adaptive. It's responsive. Since the dawn of time, we figured it out. You are born with an innate capability of figuring out how to respond and react and adapt to these challenges. Don't let it be, what am I going to do if my government subsidy doesn't come in? What am I going to do if they lay me off? What am I going to do if my kids don't go back to school till next August? What am I going to do if? Because the chaos of the unknown will take you down places you don't want to go. But the balance of the known, I am enough to respond to this situation. I am fortified with people around me who can be of service and help to me. I am built for war, and this don't misunderstand me. This that we're in the midst of now, whether you believe that this happened organically or whether you believe there's some conspiracy to it and all points in between, what we are in now is a war. But it's not a war in terms of bombs and tanks. No. It's a war of hope versus fear, of doubt versus deliverance, of recovery versus remission, of recovery versus random. The chaos is the reality that we cannot control all things, but we can control our reaction. The balance is the understanding that how we act in this time, every moment of every day, matters. It matters. You matter. This counts. Step up to a place where you can make a difference. And it doesn't matter how big that difference is. It could be getting an apple for the kid next door. It could be, pledging to a local charity to buy one surgical mask for a first responder. It could be reading an extra story to your son or daughter so that they don't go to bed and have nightmares tonight. There are millions of ways you can balance the collective energy of our planet. Please help to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. You see, the problem right now is we're inundated with this message that says, stay home, don't go anywhere, don't do anything. And there's validity to that. We don't want to spread the virus. But somehow I think people have become emotionally paralyzed that being in your home or your state of seclusion means you can't do anything anymore. Somehow I think much of our society has become emotionally paralyzed by the thought that I no longer have the freedom to move about the way I did before. And as someone who's been housebound, that lack of freedom, and I've been housebound on and off throughout my entire life due to my disability for extended periods of time, and I'll tell you what, when you're face to face with that lack of freedom, it sucks. Because you're like, what am I supposed to do? What can I do from here? And that should be our question if we want to return to balance. What can I do from where I am right now, today, that betters my world, my community, things for my family, things for my loved ones, and things for me? There is never a moment where inaction and apathy is acceptable. Go, be, do, love others, love yourself. Love the collective oneness that helps you understand that even through chaos, we are invited to return to balance. This has been Scott Golden, Golden Opportunities Coaching. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one, please, one of two ways to do that. I do have a website. That information is available on my Twitter. go to @POPerception, or you can shoot me a message right here on YouTube. I remind you, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.